Otakuology podcast with Otaku Mike Engine Graves.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Otakuology podcast. I'm your host, Otaku Mike. With me, as always, is my heterosexual life partner, and we are here moving on in our adventure, talking about Delicious in Dungeons, episodes 3 and episode 4. You
Right.
ready for this?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right, let's get into this episode 3. I'm ready to talk about it. Yeah.
So, episode 3
Mm-hmm.
is talking about living armor.
Yeah.
Which I have to say, I think this is probably one of the better. These two episodes are probably some of the better episodes that we'll have, just because it's not exactly like just a creature. I would say.
Yeah.
So in the last one, we had the roasted basilisk and the omelet and the stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in this one, we have these living armors, which everybody thought that they were basically just kind of done by magic.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out that living armor is actually more of a mollusk.
Yeah. And so, like, in this particular episode, they go further down into the dungeon, if I remember correctly. And what's the little halfling's name? I forget what his name is.
Chilchuck?
Is it Chilchuck?
Yeah.
Chilchuck, he's getting through, like, this, like, door. It's like a hidden door. And they see, like, all this armor in this really, like, big grand hall. And we find out that, is it Laios?
The blonde guy?
Yeah, Laios and his sister have actually been here before. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was this place particularly.
It looked exactly the same.
But this is he did get attacked by a living armor set, and it scarred him for a really long time.
Yeah, like, because they from the anime, this episode, it looked like, because they were with a group, they were called gold scrappers, if I think that's correct. And they would collect gold and I guess scrap it.
Okay.
And they were like young adventurers.
I must have not caught that part.
Yeah, because he goes back and he's like, oh, I've been here, kind of, because he, like, at the beginning, like, Chilchuck accidentally, like, breaks his a piece of his sword off, and it's like this, like, little thing with, like, wings on it. And he's like, oh, I got this, like 3 years ago when me and my sister were starting off and adventuring, and they were with these, like, scrappers, and like, oh, they go into this room, which looks exactly like the room that they went into in this episode. And it's a bunch of living armor. And they're like, oh, maybe we can scrap it, get some stuff out of it, And this is the scene that the flashback, they start actually killing all the people within their party, which is pretty gruesome. Like,
right.
I wasn't expecting that, to say the least. One guy ends up getting his, like, throat stabbed through with a sword. Like, I was like, oh my god! Like, I wasn't expecting, like, people to start dying.
You're like, holy crap!
Yeah, I was basically, holy crap, And I think Laios is like, okay, what we're gonna do is, like, we're going to like, just run, and that doesn't work out for them at all. So they come up with, like, a plan to, like, sneak around, like, distract them, if I remember correctly. And they're going to distract them. And he wants Chilchuck to go. But Chilchuck's like, no, that's not going to work out for me. And so he sneaks around them, and they're fighting off the living armor, which is a pretty cool scene, I have to say. I really like them fighting off the living armor. Like, the action scenes seem to be getting better.
Yeah, the action scenes for this one with the living armor were
Yeah,
great. And
yeah.
it wasn't like a quick like little, shot and a close up of somebody else or
Mhm.
whatever. It was like an actual fight scene.
Yeah, yeah, which was really cool to see, and especially with Studio Trigger, they definitely like brought their game in this episode. I feel like
Yeah.
because Trigger does action really well. We got a little action here and there in the first two episodes, but nothing this like big. Like most of the episode
Yeah.
was a lot of action.
Because the other stuff we've gotten is like usually like the standoff thing. Like
Yeah.
you'll get like a samurai where he did like a slash and then they're like standing away from each other and it'll be like, oh, okay, well, we're going to wait here like 10 seconds to see who's
Hmm.
going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, but I forget what her name is. Who's the elf girl? Like I have problems remembering all their names.
Shoot, you would ask me that.
I would ask you that, wouldn't I?
Yeah, damn it. It starts with an M.
Oh,
It
it
is Marcel.
is Marcel. Yeah,
Yeah.
Marcel. I love her in this episode. Like fighting like seeing her fight. Because she's very much like very standoffish with the monsters a lot of times. But seeing her and Shin, is it Senshi?
Senshi.
Senshi the dwarf, like him just going at it with these armor, it was pretty crazy to see. But I have a question for you because I
Okay.
noticed this watching it.
Yeah.
Um, Laos's sister, is she blind
No.
or she's not?
No.
Okay, because she has like the Brock eyes, and she never opens them. I
She
noticed.
shouldn't have the Brock eyes unless something's going on.
Yeah, she has like the slants on her eyes in this episode. So I was like, is she blind or what's going on here? Or she just have really, really slanted eyes?
What in the hell?
I was just curious because that was a little
Yeah.
detail that I noticed. Even I
Yeah.
even noticed in like part of the intro for the anime, like her eyes were closed.
Yeah.
So I was really curious to see. But one thing I do like about this is that we did get a little bit into Laos's backstory, a little bit being like a young adventurer. I
We did,
did like that a
yes.
lot because I mean, like
I enjoyed that part too.
I enjoyed the whole flashback with the armor and stuff, and them like being like reluctant to fight the living armor and stuff, and them being inexperienced. But because I feel like it brings a little bit more character into Laos in this episode. Because to be honest, I feel like he's kind of like there's no like real character for him,
That's
and
true.
it's
Besides the foodie side.
besides the foodie side. I feel like he's just
Yeah.
like blank slate like character. Like we pulled off a character sheet and we haven't even like developed this character. He's very like just a blank slate. I feel like which is
Yeah.
fine. But we do get character development in this, which I do like, uh,
Right.
which I
And
think is really cool.
I totally agree with you because I feel like the first one nobody really had character development. And
Yeah.
then we've kind of had a little bit for Marcel, and we've kind of had a little bit last time for Chilchuck,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
we haven't really had anything for Laos as of yet. And so this
Yeah.
one really getting some backstory.
Is
We did get some more.
Yeah, and so we get to the part where Leos gets through to this room, and there's just this armor in this room. It's very like ornate armor. He has like a big lion's head, which is really cool. Like the armor looks really cool. It reminds me something of like Final Fantasy or like Gladiator. I feel like
Yes.
it's a really cool armor, and I was like, oh man, that's cool. I was like, I wonder if Leos like gets to wear that armor because I don't like his character design at all at the moment.
Laos's?
Yeah, I want him to get like some new gear or something that makes him look cooler because I think he's
Yeah.
kind of lame. He just looks lame. Like you like, oh, here's standard adventurer guy, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, At least like
See, and I kind of feel like that's one of the things that they try and portray him as, though.
like at least like Senshi has like, cooking utensils and stuff like that, And we get into the next episode, we'll talk about that later. Like his little hat he puts over on his gardening hat he puts over on his helmet. I think it's funny
Yeah.
as fuck. I think it's funny, you know. Uh, but we get this really cool fight with Laios in the armor, and he like his sword gets broken. He ends up throwing a brick at the armor, and the armor takes the brunt of the force of the brick like head on. The armor doesn't even block it. And then we find
Right.
out the armor is protecting something, which is like an egg sac or an egg case. And
Yeah.
we get this weird like flashback of Leos holding like an egg case on a stick.
What is that?
He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
I know
what is
exactly
that?"
what that
I know
is.
exactly what that is. Which I was like, "Oh man, did like I know it's like a different way to like show like a flashback, but I wondered if for a minute if like Studio Trigger like used all their budget for this episode on the fight scenes for a little bit."
Oh my
So it's like
gosh.
it just took me out of it, sort of,
Yeah.
when they showed that part. And I was like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. It reminded me of like, I don't know if you ever seen Samurai 7, but like you get to
Yes.
like episode 3 or 4 and like the animation just goes really fucking weird. It takes like a hit, you know?
Yes.
I was like, oh no, like, because usually with an anime, stuff will like you'll have really good first 2 episodes, and then like the animation just takes a dip in quality. Which I'm glad to see that this only for that split second. I feel like it took a dip in quality,
Yeah.
but as we're going, I feel like the next episode is actually pretty good as well. But how did he defeat the armor? I forgot how he defeated it.
So he defeated the armor by throwing the rock, and he knocked the helmet off
Uh-huh.
and grabbed it, and then he ran behind the pillar and was trying to figure out what to do with it, and ended up finding that there were kind of like 2 grooves on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So he stuck his sword in one and got it pried open, and the little mollusk guy kind of popped out.
That was really confusing because I didn't know what it was. I was wondering if it was like a parasite or something.
Yeah. No, it's supposed to be like a kind of like a clam or a starfish.
Okay, gotcha. Because
Yeah.
I was like, I've never seen this fantasy animal, monster, but then like we find out that all of these are being controlled by like they each have one in each suit of armor. Is that correct?
They each have many in each suit of armor.
Many. Okay, more than one. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
gotcha.
Basically in between these sets of plates that are in here, you
Uh-huh.
have them where they work like an outside shell and an inside shell, and they hold
Okay.
on to one of them so it sticks to them.
Uh-huh.
And then each one has its role in playing the living armor's body.
Yeah.
And so they will sit there and adjust themselves to make sure like which way they are, so they know like, hey, this is your role. Kind of like every pilot for Voltron, they can't
Oh, okay.
swap
Yeah,
places,
yeah.
and so each one works as a set of muscles in between where all the areas are.
Okay.
And they hold on to each other. So
I must have missed that part, or they didn't describe it that well in the anime. Because
yeah,
I remember them sort of talking about that, sort of talking about the monster in
yeah,
the anime, and how was it I think they were guarding the suit of armor, or guarding the egg sacs. Like all of them are guarding the egg sac.
yes,
I think it was. And I thought it was funny, like knowing that Laios has a fear of armor, like just suits
Right.
of armor, is funny because
Yeah.
of like the traumatic experience he went through like
Hey,
3 years ago.
maybe you answered your own question there. Maybe that's why he looks kind of derpy.
Maybe okay, maybe that's why he looks kind of derpy then. But I thought that was funny. Like like he didn't realize like each time he saw one holding hands with another that there was a monster inside of it. He thought it
Yeah.
was like just like a joke that somebody put on, which I thought was really funny. And
Right.
they end up cooking the monsters, and I don't remember what exactly they make in this episode for the monsters at
When
all.
they cook them,
Yeah.
so they steam them in the helmet.
Okay.
They pull some out and they fry them
Hmm.
in a little dish. So that's the ones that make them really look like their oyster parts.
Okay.
Their oyster counterparts. They get made into a salad after they're
Uh huh.
cooked, and they get made into like a soup.
Okay. Okay. All right. And
Yeah,
then Leos gets a new sword, which is
Laios
pretty
does get
cool.
a new sword.
New sword with I'm really interested to see because they don't bring it up in the next episode at all. I'm
Right.
really interested to see what that little thing in the sword does.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh man, because he pops out for a split second, and Leos keeps it like like a secret from the other party members,
Right.
and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. I was like, oh man, and I was like, wait a minute, I hope we don't get like one of those Disney mascot characters for each like film, you have like the little lizard in Frozen, or like
Yeah.
like the little cute like character that follows like the main character around. I was like, man, I
Right.
hope we don't get one of those. I hope this new party member is more interesting than that. But we'll have to see, exactly where we go from here. I mean, you probably know because you've read the manga. I haven't.
Right. Part of it.
I haven't. I
Yeah.
haven't read it, so I don't know. You know, but
Yeah.
but I did enjoy this episode quite a bit. I really did.
I enjoyed this episode quite a bit as well.
It this episode made me more interested in continuing. I mean, I know I
Yeah.
said like I enjoyed the first two episodes. I wasn't like completely on board because like there wasn't enough action for me in this anime at that time. But
Didn't hit your foodie side.
it didn't hit my foodie side. Even though I feel like the food in this is very well portrayed. Like
Yeah.
it looks like your typical delicious anime food thing where they make everything look delicious and look tasty.
Where they make it look delicious in dungeon.
Yeah, delicious and dessert, whatever. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, this episode it was better than I was expecting it to be. Like it got me more invested in continuing and watching this series because
Yeah.
somebody got a little upset that apparently I rated the first two episodes a 3.5, and she was a little upset with me about that. She was
I
like,
got a text message on that.
"Oh, you did, you did."
Yeah. Who could rate such a good show like that?
Hey, to be fair, a 3.5 is not a bad rating for a first impression. I feel like
Yeah,
I didn't say it was shit, okay?
this is true. This is
I did
true. You
not say
didn't
that
say
at
that.
all. You know.
You did not say that.
No, no I didn't.
It starts
Yeah, moving on to
and
episode 3 or
or
4, sorry,
episode
4.
4. Yeah,
4, sorry.
and we get a lot more stuff. I feel like in this one of like knowing the dungeon.
We get more sort of info about Senshi too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Laios is walking around, and we find out he's got this other weird trick that he knows.
Hmm.
Um, just by ear, Laios can tell you what creatures are around.
Which I thought that was actually pretty cool.
I thought it was fucking amazing. Like, if you could do that to avoid, like, getting attacked or something, like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, at one point he says, "Oh, well, there's some golems down here." And we hear him say that and that they're going to walk a different way. Well, then Senshi says, "No, no, we got to go down this way." So they go down that way, and Senshi has a little base that's down there
Very
that he
little.
has like plows and rations and spices and stuff. He calls it like his restock station.
Is that like hidden from everybody else? 'Cause it looked like it was
Yeah,
kind
it's
of,
behind one of the doors.
yeah. It was like a very, very little crawl space.
Yes. I'm sure there's, more walking through the dungeon to get to it too,
Yeah, yeah,
than what we kind of actually just saw.
yeah.
But he does that, and he goes into this other room where there are three golems in there. He
Hmm.
pulls out his shovel and he knocks out their cores, uh, which they have a different name. I can't remember what it is. It's like some
Hmm.
kind of little doll core of what the
It looked
spirit's
like
in.
it almost looked like a crucifix almost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so that or one of the little straw dolls.
yeah. Which I thought this scene was really cool with Senshi, um, like fighting the golems with the
Yeah.
shovel. Like I was like, oh man, that's cool because everybody was like sitting there, like or standing there, like what's he gonna do to these golems? How's he gonna take them on by himself? But
Yeah.
he knows these golems
He knows
somehow.
where their things at.
He knows where their things are at.
And so he gets them and he knocks them over. They fall over into like a dirt pile.
Yeah.
And he lets us know that basically these are his vegetable gardens.
Hmm.
So he uses these and he talks about how they're a lot better than your average farm garden. Because since they're living, they actually protect themselves and don't let other things like get at them, and they make sure like they keep their moisture up and everything else, versus like somebody else having to do that for
Yeah. Yeah.
them. But he gets the whole crew to basically like sit there and
Garden.
um, yeah, garden, and they garden the whole time, and like Laos is like, "Oh, this is even more harder than adventuring."
Yeah. I feel like
Um,
they're harvest mooning it up at this point because all they did
right? Yes.
for a chunk of the episode is like garden like cabbage and carrots and stuff and
Right, and try and
yeah,
sell it. Yeah.
yeah. Which I well,
Um,
there was a part that I thought was really funny, and it's
yeah,
later on where they go to actually sell the stuff,
yeah.
and they just have like vegetables like stuck in their armor or in like I think
Oh, yeah.
oh
Leo says
god.
all the carrots
He has all the
poking out.
carrots, and then what's her name? What's her name? Um,
Marcel.
Marcel has all the cabbage or lettuce, I
Yeah,
think it is, and one of them's like stuck in her staff,
yeah.
which I thought that was fucking hilarious.
See, and I really like the carrot thing with Leos because he had them like sticking out of each side of his bedroll,
Yeah, yeah, he did, and like they
and
were in
it
his
was just funny.
belt, they were in his
Yeah.
belt and stuff. Yeah, that was hysterical. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah,
So they go there and they are trying to basically like garden all this stuff. Um, they get it done, which one of the things that I find funny that I think really makes Delicious and Dungeon stick out from other stuff is even though they're in this room with all this dirt and everything and they're putting them back together, there's still like a little like water fountain there that they're washing the tools off in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so it kind of seems funny that there's little things that are in the places here and there in Delicious and Dungeon like that.
Yeah, like, oh, who put the stuff in here? You know that
Right, right.
was it Senshi or somebody else? You know who did it? You know.
Right. So we find out that Senshi is illegally making golems, quote
Oh
unquote.
yeah, illegally, yeah.
Yeah. And
Which he's got some bootleg, I guess, bootleg or counterfeit vegetables or whatever.
right.
he's, ille-
Um
he's, he's illegally selling vegetables, I guess, too.
yeah. So he does that, and then they all have names, and
Yeah.
he sticks the things back into him after he swaps vegetables around.
Hmm.
Um he does give us some pretty good gardening tips.
Yeah.
And they have to. He waits for Marcel to leave before telling him, like, yeah, I put these back in there, and for them to come back and like come back to life. We find out it doesn't happen like right away. The thing actually has to take root in him again.
Yeah. Which I feel like there was some underlining thing with the golems and him like naming them and stuff. Like that, I feel like that was like a plot thread that was like left open for
Yeah,
future, possibly like some secret thing that happened or whatever with the golems or whatever, or maybe somebody else. Who knows?
yeah. I don't know. It's because it seems like some of the ones he has are just regular like boy names.
Yeah,
I kind of want to know because he said that there's three left and that there used to be like seven or eight.
yeah,
So I kind of want to know like why couldn't he like go back and fix those other ones and all?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I thought
but he
maybe
does that. He has pots of like um of stuff
uh-huh.
um fertilizer
Yeah,
and
he like throws it on the golems.
yeah, and it's funny because Marcel disappears and says she's using one of the bathrooms, and it always has the best bathrooms on this floor. And she's talking about it, and she's like, "Wait, how are the bathrooms always so clean and nice and whatever?" And it's actually Senshi that does it, and it's his way of giving back to the dungeon.
He
Um,
cleans the bathrooms.
right,
He's the
and so
janitor.
he puts all the manure and stuff in a thing and lets it kind of get ripe to give to the golems and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think
so
it's
he
still
does that, and
I
then
think it's still funny that Marcel is still like very weary about monsters and like eating like vegetables from a golem,
right.
which is funny.
Well, I mean, and eating the vegetables, I think is hilarious because she's like, "Oh my god, actual vegetables!" Because everything else they've had so
Was
far
yeah.
has been like monster meat.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Oh my god, it's not the best." And then when they had this little kind of like buffet of vegetable stuff, like her face just lit up. It was like, "Oh boy."
Yeah.
It
Vegetables.
was
Yay.
hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um so they did that, and he was going to go try and sell it to these other people, but somehow since she knew that they weren't there, so they decided by Laos's recommendation for them to kind of go sell it to this tavern
That's
that
inside the dungeons.
that's inside the dungeon. Yes, and it has
And it's
criminals and other
yeah,
people like
criminals.
that.
Yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
they didn't want the vegetables at all.
right,
Which was really funny. They're like, we want gold, and they're like, these are shiny, like gold. They're shiny vegetables.
right.
Ugh. But
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, sorry, but yeah, that this part was interesting because they were trying to like get around the like trying to not die from the bar people, you know, and
yeah. So with the bar people, I think is pretty crazy, especially because we got the whole thing where they were arguing with them about um they were trying to sell vegetables and they're like, what do we look like? Like, have gold. We don't we don't need vegetables.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can tell that probably none of those people have eaten a vegetable since they've been down there.
They were some very savory people.
They were, but it was funny because since like all the characters we've seen so far,
Hmm.
like female wise, we've seen Marcel and we've seen the little dwarf person that was originally in the party and a few adventurers, but we haven't really seen any other like
Yeah.
female characters besides those.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was funny, like in the bar, like we had all these busty women that were in there, and I was like, what in the
the
hell?
the barmaids or bar patrons or whatever,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I thought that was funny. Of course, like part of the people that were down here were like criminals. So it also makes you think like, does everybody have like certain rooms that are down here in places?
Maybe.
And like this one had like steel over it or whatever.
Like,
Is
would you consider it like a safe room almost?
kind of, yeah. I mean, obviously it couldn't have been too safe, but
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what
After what
happened
happens,
shortly.
yeah.
But yeah, and I just like the whole part where it's funny that all these people are like, no, we don't want vegetables,
Yeah.
vegetables,
Nobody likes vegetables.
yeah. And then that's when we hear basically somebody kick in the door,
Yeah.
and they're going around starting to kill everybody. And I really think that the vegetables were what saved them,
And
because somebody's
they do
like,
Senshi as well.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think just the vegetables are what made them stop first. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like they're like, wait, hold on.
They have
There's
food.
there's just random people standing here with vegetables. Like the hell? And so I think it kind of got them to like hold off for a second and like actually look, because then like it's the ogres or the orcs, I guess, and they're
Hmm.
sitting there looking. And they go, "Oh, Senshi, it's you."
Yeah.
And so like all that crap happens, which I thought was hilarious.
Because they were the people that he sells to.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they had to move down from the fourth floor up to the third floor, um, because of things that were going on.
Hmm. Do they
Like
say what's
the
going
red
on
dragon
on the
was.
fourth floor?
Yeah, he said that the red dragon had kind of been in their area,
Okay.
so they had moved up and built kind of like little ramshackle places up there.
They're on the run.
Yep, which they're there and they're looking for food because they can't find any. And one of the guys thinks that there's like milk in a jar, and he's like, "Oh, that's spoiled." And there's tons and
Sin-
tons of bags of flour.
Senshi gets really upset and tells him not to throw that jar away.
Oh yeah, he's like, "Bring it
He's
with us."
like, "Bring it with me. I can make something out of that."
Yeah, I thought that was so hilarious because Senshi like was going off the whole time about this jar, and you find out what it is yeast.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's fermenting yeast, which is what you use to have bread rise.
Okay. Okay.
And so they
Gotcha.
use the flour and some water, and that's why they have the little scene where they're making the bread.
Uh-huh.
Um, he asked all of them, which this doesn't make any sense to me. Whenever he was like, "Well, you can do whatever, and you can even have my life if you let us stay with you for one night," and I was like, kind of sitting there like, is he being really cocky about this? Like, oh yeah, I mean, I know you're not going to ask for it, but I'll even give you my life, for part of
Yeah.
this or whatever. But I think he just kind of knew what was going to play out.
Like
And
they
so
were in
that,
need.
yeah, like he knew like him making bread, he could feed a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And so, they went down and they started making this bread and doing all this other stuff. And of course, we get some more history with the elves and why the orcs are in the dungeon and all this other stuff. Are because other races kind of like drove them down there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
And
There was some kind
didn't
of
really
prophecy,
see.
right? Some kind of prophecy with like the tall man or something.
No,
Tall men.
that's separate. So we'll come back to that.
Okay, okay.
But because of like the orcs being on the surface, like a lot of the races hated them because of things, and we find out that it's actually because of like this battle that happened kind of a long time ago between the orcs and the elves,
Hmm.
and all the other more human-looking races joined the elf side to kind of banish the orcs to the dungeon,
Of course, they would join the elf side.
right?
Of course.
Right. So that happens. Um, and then from the leader orc, which don't ask me his name because I don't remember that.
Oh, I don't remember what his name is either.
He brings up the prophecy like you were talking about, and it's not a tall man; it's anybody. If
Okay.
anybody gets down through the dungeon and defeats like the boss, then they own the dungeon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's basically the prophecy. Nobody's ever done it. Nobody actually knows about it. Nobody knows if that's actually true because there's not anything like written in stone. It's just like an old prophecy or wives' tale from like back in the day, supposedly in the days of the dungeon.
Okay.
So nobody knows that per se. But yeah, I think it's funny with this whole part with Marcel and the orc chieftain going at it, like throwing and beating their bread and doing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And Senshi is almost like a referee almost because he's like, all right, it's time to like rise. So then they like do that and they take their corners.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
boxers, they take their corners and like they're still
Like,
kind of
who has
arguing
the
about
best
shit.
bread?
Yeah. And then they get back into it and they do that and he's like, oh, you guys made us bread. Well, that's our property. And he finally caves down. Because his son is like, we all made it together, Daddy.
Yeah.
And so, even though we know like all this shit's going on, we know that uh Papa Orc it has a soft spot.
He's a big old softy.
Yeah,
He acts tough.
he's like
In
Otaku
reality,
Mike.
he's a softy, you know.
He's like Otaku Mike.
Sure, I guess.
Big old softy. Um but they do that and they pull out all the food and stuff that they brought and some other things. So they actually have a bunch of different stuff, which was really cool to see all of them enjoying stuff with the orcs. And this is another part, kind of like what you said earlier, where
Hmm.
I thought Laos' character was really bland because he didn't say anything.
He didn't do much in this episode.
Yeah, until he got called out about that. And it was like, you said that, you wanted to know what I would do if I, well, I just like to like kind of like leave it the same.
Yeah.
So he didn't really have anything he wanted to add to the dungeon at all.
This
Or
is this is very much like a Senshi episode almost. I
I
feel
would
like.
say, I would say mostly part of it. And then the other ones kind of like got drained into it, which seems
Yeah.
like it's happened with every episode so far.
I mean, which is fine, like it's fine to have like episodes that like focus on like certain characters or whatever. But I mean, it is almost like an ensemble cast.
Yes.
I feel like.
Well, and we only have the 4 people we're focusing on now. So
Yeah,
it's
which
not
which in the opening there's like 12 of them I think or something like that. There's a lot of
right.
characters.
Right. Well, see, and the other weird thing I've noticed with the opener is when they do the little thing where they're reaching for each other,
Uh-huh.
one of the sides is all girls and the other side is all boys.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, because I was
Interesting.
sitting there like, wait, okay, there's Chilchuck, there's Senshi, and Laios is the one reaching, and then, you know, because I thought it was going to kind of be split of people from the past. And
Yeah.
and then when I looked at it, I'm like, wait, Marcel's not there. Marcel's on the other side. So Yeah, it's like a female and a male side, and they're lifting up Farrell or whatever her name is,
Yeah,
Laios' sister, and
it kind of reminds me of like the 16th Chapel. Whenever they do it, they're like,
right. I agree.
yeah, yeah,
That is definitely what it looks like. Um, but yeah, they do that, and then out of the goodness of his heart, the orc tells them like where he saw the red dragon at, and so other stuff like that. So
yeah, and they kind of just go on their way, with looking for the red dragon and stuff, and that's kind of where the episode ends. But what did you think of these two episodes in general?
um, I liked him pretty well.
Yeah, I I,
Um,
I did too.
like I said, I felt like there was a little more meat to him on stuff because there was almost like a mystery with the living armor one.
Yeah,
And it was really cool just having like the golem thing and all that.
hmm
And the next one, and of course, like knowing that since you knew the orcs, and you also kind of got more of like this whole thing. I mean, and we've heard about it, we just haven't really seen it. Um, we heard more of this other stuff about really knowing the the characters and stuff of part of
yeah,
this.
like getting more
Um,
more more of their characteristics and backstories almost.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, and just knowing like what drives them, I would say
Well,
almost.
obviously, Laios is driven by wanting his sister to not be eaten.
Right.
We don't really have anything else for the other ones
Right. I agree.
except for Senshi.
Um,
Senshi loves food.
yeah. What? And off of that, we kind of get like the appreciation for the dungeon. I think that's a really good thing that we kind of get with Senshi's character right now. Is he's
hmm
like, every step that you take in the dungeon like could have like consequences to it. You have to
Yeah,
make sure like the ecosystem in the dungeon is good.
yeah, yeah,
So I really like that. That's getting pushed forward on a bunch of the stuff. Is like,
yeah.
hey,
All right.
you,
Well, one thing I really want is I want their party to like start expanding a little bit, like introducing more people to the
and
party.
I mean, we probably won't get that for a little while.
Yeah,
Let's see.
but
And
I
there
mean,
is something I want to look at real quick.
okay.
So we going off of what's in the titles, we did get it was two.
Uh huh.
So episode one was Hot Pot and Tart.
Uh huh.
Episode two was chapters 3, 4, and 5.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, episode 3 was 6 and 7. And episode 4 gets us into the first two chapters of book 2.
Okay. So they're moving pretty fast then.
Yeah, so they're covering about 2 or 3 every time.
That's pretty crazy because most anime only cover like 1 to 2 chapters an episode if they're basing it off of a manga.
Yeah,
But that's pretty crazy. That they're moving that fast.
right. Well, and at this point, I think it'll probably be done by the time the books are done.
Maybe if depending on like how many episodes we get of this first season.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
don't know.
But if you had to rate these two episodes, what would you rate them at?
Uh, Let me ask you this real quick.
Uh huh.
If I rated it at a 3.5, would I get threatened?
I don't know. That's what I'm going to rate it as a 3 point, a strong, hearty 3.5 out of
I
5.
I'd probably go with a 4 again.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Yeah, I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean it's fun. It's fun to watch. I mean, it's not like the episodes don't really drag it at this moment.
Yes.
Like they're not really dragging. They're not really. There is a bunch of like info dumping, but it doesn't feel like info dumping, like anime info dumping. You
Right.
know, they seem to move along fairly nicely and like quickly.
Right.
It seems like because you know how we
See, and I think the info dumping part that we kind of get with it is spread out unless
yeah
it pertains to cooking.
yeah
And I think that's one of my favorite parts from like Senshi's point of view is we'll get like little like things of him cooking,
yeah
and it'll be him talking. He'll be like, well, first we take the chicken and we cut it, and we'll get like a little scene of him like cutting, you know,
yeah
and it'll
cutting
be
the
like,
chicken, preparing the vegetables.
and then you pulverize it, and then you do this, and then you
Yeah,
fry it up, and you're like, but of
I
course
f-
he's saying more than that, but as fast as he's kind of talking, you're like, what the fuck?
I feel like if I read the manga, I don't feel like I would enjoy this this series as much, to be honest, because I feel like that would probably be drawn out in the manga.
I don't know. I feel like I'm still enjoying the manga more.
Uh huh.
And I don't know if it's because of how much color is in the anime.
Yeah.
Um, because it's all really fun, you know, and then you get these little excerpts of like this is how they're cooking it and stuff and
Yeah.
all that. But then when scenes in the thing are like really dark, they're really dark. So like the living armor one, I feel like seems darker in the manga than it does in the anime. And
Maybe.
I don't know if it's because of the color or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Who knows? But somebody, well, I kind of want to wrap this up. But somebody told me, or they said that delicious. I can't talk. Delicious in Dungeons was basically like the fantasy version of Food Wars. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, nobody's losing their clothes in
Wait,
Delicious in
wait.
Dungeons.
Who told you that?
I can't tell you on air.
Okay.
I can't tell you on
Um.
air. But
Uh.
the name rhymes with, I don't know, Jornathan. And I was like, "What? How did you get
No
that?
comment.
Is it because they're both food related?
um.
I don't know. I mean, I was like, ah,
So we may have to do a bonus episode just talking about this compared to other food manga in general.
uh,
Because I mean, I love food manga, but the sad thing is I'm going to definitely say hell the fuck no, because in this, like, you actually first it's fantasy based.
yeah,
Two, they actually tell you what they're cooking.
that's true.
The other one, they don't really do that. It'll be like I added this in there, and you're like, oh, well, what's the other 12 ingredients you used? You know, this one, like, Senshi's pretty open about telling us every little fucking thing that he does.
And we don't see Senshi like orgasm when he
Oh my
eats the
god,
food.
right? Well, and we don't see anybody else. You know,
Yeah,
if we do, it's kind of like when Marcel takes a bite, and she's like, I didn't expect it to be so good. You know, like that's the closest we get.
low key, she like creamed in her pants at that moment. Just saying.
Oh my god. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. No clothes came off in this recording of, you know,
She, yeah, but
a
yeah,
fantasy food wars.
I had to throw that in there after we recorded the first episode. They asked, "Oh, what's coming up?" And I was like, "Oh, we talk about Delicious in Dungeons." And he's like, "Oh, that's like Food Wars, right? Like
Oh
fantasy
my
Food
god.
Wars." And I was like,
Oh my god.
"Ah."
No. No, 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 no.
But I mean, it is what it is, you know. But
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue this series. It's fun to talk about, you know, and
Right.
watch and stuff, you know.
Food
Yeah.
recommendation series.
But yeah. But yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Remember to subscribe and rate and review the podcast. You can leave us feedback on Apple Podcast or on Spotify. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Stay safe
Yep, we
and
will. See you next Tuesday.
exactly.